Bonjour. Bienvenue à Paris. Welcome to Paris. Welcome to the 17th arrondissement, friends. Another virtual tour with your friend Véro. Today we are going to explore a neighborhood that's maybe not as well known as other sections of Paris. And I decided to start this walk right here along the very busy and fairly unremarkable Avenue de Clichy, right next to a metro stop known as Brochon. You see the name right here in the middle. Bonjour, welcome. Métro Brochon is part of line 13, the much derided, it's not the most popular metro line in Paris, to tell you the truth. It's slow, it's crowded, but this used to be the main way to come here to this neighborhood. Things have changed recently, and I'll mention that later. I can see you pop up. You can see that this metro entrance, by the way, is a little different from the ones you're used to seeing maybe in downtown Paris. The ones during the World Fair in 1900, a lot of the metro stations were in the Art Nouveau style by a gentleman named Hector Guimard. And this one is very different. You can see the signage is different. You can also see that they have spent time and probably money designing something quite pretty. And the goal was to attract Parisians to the metro, because this entrance, this stop, is on a couple of lines that were introduced after the first few lines of the Parisian metro in 1900. And so this was a different style. And it's fun to go around Paris and see all the different styles of metro entrances and stations that you can have. But this one I really like, especially with the backdrop of these beautiful buildings. You can see the buildings, late 19th century. So today we are in the Batignolles, and I will introduce myself in a few minutes. Libatinol is a lovely neighborhood, and the words you will hear more often about it are, I should say, quaint, village-like, family-friendly, quiet, laid back, and I guess this still applies today. But we are standing right by the Avenue de Clichy, this busy, loud street right here, and this used to be one of the borders of this neighborhood, Les Batignolles, and in fact, it was attached to Clichy, which was a much bigger village for a really long time, until it became independent. And we will talk about what happened through the course of its history. So I think I'll start walking now. I gave you a few minutes to arrive. I see there are almost 300 people here today. Welcome, welcome. Bonjour les amis. The sun will be facing us for just a short while. I'm going to make a left very quickly. We are walking along la Rue Brochon. I know some of you like to follow. Brochon is the same name as the metro station, B-R-O-C-H-A-N-T. So the weather is nice. They had predicted nice weather, about the mid-60s, which is thrilling after the cold weather we've had. But it's windier than I would like, and I hope the microphone is not picking up too much noise for you. 300 of you, thank you for joining me. It will be plenty lively. You will see probably in the first half a little bit quieter, and then the second half of the stroll you'll see a lot more people. You know, I like to show you Parisians going about their daily lives, and we will get plenty of that. So we are here outside a building that is very important in Les Batignolles. It's been here since the mid-19th century, and it's the famous market, the covered market of Les Batignolles. It's open every day except Monday. It's this whole building, and it's open in the morning, it's open in the afternoon, and this is a great place to come and shop for food. There's also an organic market that's quite renowned, but it doesn't open every day like this one. I quite like the street art that's been here for a while. It's clearly dedicated to literacy and books, and I like this panel in particular with the two children and the street sign, the iconic street sign saying Rue Brochon, which is the name of our street. Thank you for confirming the sound is good. Thank you. That helps. So today we are not in downtown Paris. We are not in monumental Paris. We are not on the left bank. We are not in a touristy area. We are in a real neighborhood. Especially right now, there are no visitors, no international visitors around, and so you will see people who are basically locals. Look at this one, Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince. And another favorite is this one, because it's inspired by Notre Dame. Look at the colors on this one. Isn't this pretty? It's like a little gargoyle reading a book. And I think it is inspired by Notre Dame. So there are a few of them, and they go all around the building. We won't go inside the market for two reasons. Number one, cell coverage is not very good in it. Number two, I did film a video for my club members this morning that I'll be sharing next week with them. You know, they do get some perks for helping me share all the free content I share on social media every day, Facebook, Instagram, on YouTube. And I filmed the video in a section of this neighborhood we won't be seeing that I'll share with club members next week. I'll tell you more about the club a little later. I like to show you Paris as it is, not a glamorized version. And today you will see scaffoldings, construction. You will see delivery trucks. You might see some traffic jams, and you just saw an old toilet abandoned in the corner here, because that is Paris too. It's a big city. Big cities often have warts. I will show you the name of the street. So you see the market has several entrances. It goes all around the building. 375 of you, thank you for joining us. We are strolling in Libatinol, a beautiful neighborhood in the northwestern section of Paris, off the beaten path, you might say. It's become a lot more popular in the last, 15, 20 years, I would say. You're going to see a lot of this. We have people getting a drink outside. Cafes, bars, restaurants have been closed for weeks, but they're all allowed to do takeout. The problem they're going to have this weekend is the weather is nice and customers tend to hang out, which is not really legal. So the police has already warned everybody that they will be monitoring closely what's going to happen, and some people might get in trouble if they don't respect social distancing. It's a bit of a problem, of course, for restaurant and cafe owners if customers drink and just hang out. This is La Rue des Moines, monks, the street of monks. So we're outside of the market, but you can see so many food specialty shops here. And this is very common in the 17th arrondissement. Some sections are very residential and quieter, but a lot of the sections in the 17th have this neighborhood feel to them, and Les Batignolles certainly does. Good morning, bienvenue. I can see you popping in. Thank you for joining us. You can hear the sound of Paris. I'll try not to talk too much so you can hear Paris too. It's always happy to please, likes to be her loud self. We are going to make a left into a street here called Rue Nollet. You see the name on that plaque, N-O-L-L-E-T. I'm going to make a left here. And all I'm going to do really is walk around this neighborhood, left, right, to give you a feel for what the neighborhood used to be like and is today. Because as you know, what I like to do is connecting the present to the past and to see how neighborhoods evolve in Paris. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of Libatinol in a few minutes. I know some of you have been here or have stayed here. You see these facades. For now, this doesn't really look like a village, does it? What you see here is the type of facades I did in the late 19th century, maybe early 20th, that you see in many other neighborhoods in Paris. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be like a private investigator and try and find the older buildings that will help us understand what the neighborhood looked like a long, long time ago. So for now, let's see, I should introduce myself. Voilà, bonjour. Véro. Maybe I could do that actually, so you can see my face for a few minutes. It's legal when nobody's around. Thank you for being here. I am a Paris-based virtual guide, and I share Paris and France every day on social media, on my YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you should, because there is so much. There are so many great virtual travel experiences on that YouTube channel already, all for free. So you should really subscribe after you've watched the stroll. Today I'm taking you through a favorite neighborhood. People come here and usually fall in love with it. And you might understand why better if you've never been here when we are finished with this stroll. Okay, I'll pop in again, or pop by. What is it? Pop in, pop by. All right. So we're going to see some pretty beautiful apartments here. Okay, so first I'd like to show you this facade across from us. This facade is something we call classé, which means protected. There's a sign that tells you what the store used to be. Do you see up here? It says papeterie, imprimerie, articles de bureau. So this was a stationery store, which has been turned into a high-end clothing shop. Above it are two plaques that tell you the old names. I'm going to remove my finger so you can see them. The old names of the two streets. Rue Legendre, we're on right now, used to be named Rue d'Orléans, and Rue Saint-Louis, Saint Louis, after the king, Louis IX, used to be the name of Rue Nollet, the one we're following right now. So the past is never too far away. It's always there if you care to look, to remind you of what happened. So picture this place a long, long time ago, at the foot of Montmartre, really, and very pastoral. A long, long time ago, the first dynasty of French kings, the Merovingians, used to hunt here, hunting grounds, and then it became very pastoral with fields and vineyards, and was used through the Middle Ages to feed the rest of Paris. They made wine, they grew things. Here's an example of a pretty home. This one happens to be pink. Most of them aren't pink, but this is an example of the type of homes, of low homes, I should say, village homes, a really nice one at that you would have found in this neighborhood in the 19th century, when the neighborhood started to grow, first half of the 19th century. I am guessing the top floor here was added, and really it was only 1 or 2 floors, which is what was the norm. If you had a little money and you lived in Paris and you could afford a home in Libatinol for the weekend, you would probably build it a little bit tucked away from the street like this one, so you wouldn't be bothered by the street. So somebody a very lucky person is living here right now, protected by a gate and of course a digicode. Digicodes everywhere. And we're going to see some other homes. Alors. Here's an interesting building, 1906. So 1906, for those of you familiar with architecture, Parisian architecture, it's Art Nouveau. That period that is going to last for about 15 years. Lots of curves, and this one is incredible because it has a vine. It's like a vine growing alongside the building on both sides. The same thing up there. Do you see how intricate this is? It's a lovely building. So not at all typical of the village houses in the early part of the 19th century. That came later, of course. We'll keep walking, and I'll point out more houses and buildings as I see them. So where was I with our story? I was saying they used to farm the land. We had some powerful people on the Butte de Montmartre, on Montmartre. There was a big abbey that ruled the area for about 600 years until the French Revolution, and it was run by abbesses, and they were Benedictines too, with a convent. They owned a lot of the land around Montmartre, the mills, the windmills later on, and they controlled this area as well. They controlled the production, everything that was grown around here. And you will see when we reach another street that there is a reference to them. So our little Batignolles was a hamlet that was connected in the 18th century to Clichy, where we started this walk. And Clichy was bigger, it was the parish, and the Batignolles were connected to Clichy for a long time. And then in the 1830s, they claimed their independence, which a French king named Charles X was happy to give them. At that point, they became independent, an actual village. They still weren't part of Paris. We will talk about that too. And they started growing and growing and growing. Look at the ceramics. You see the ceramic on top of the windows here. There's some pretty. I'm going to need to cross. You know, the cars are the scourge of Paris. They really are. Even on a Saturday like this, look at this. 418 of you, that's wonderful. Look at this beautiful building. You have some brick here, some ceramic work. So that tells us it was added late 19th, early 20th maybe. Just another beautiful facade. But so far we haven't seen that many homes, that many village homes that were here before. Here's another one by Georges Sinel, 1909. Beautiful railings as well. I'm always very slow when I do this, so you get a chance to catch the details. In case you're wondering and you're new here, I'm not going to show you only buildings, we're also going to see people. We are in the residential part of the neighborhood. A fairly quiet street. Here's another one that's worth a mention. It's signed Marcel Condé, the architect's name. It was built in 1912. Quite pretty too, with a pretty significant top floor on the right-hand side there. Not bad, eh? Ah, finally, a lower house. Here is an example of lower homes. I'm not sure this one is quite that old, but I'm going to try and give you an idea of what the streets looked like when we had those lower buildings on them. Okay, another car. You gotta have eyes behind your head between the bicycles and the cars here. So the Rue Nollet keeps going. I could follow it to the end, but I have created a little bit of a nice stroll around, so I think it's more interesting for you to see a combination of the streets. So I told you that Les Batignolles became independent in the 1830s from Clichy, the bigger town nearby. Here's a nice little shop that represents local artists. I can cross and we can look. But at that time, early 19th century, Les Batignolles were still not part of Paris. In fact, in the late 18th century, right before the French Revolution, Louis XVI had another wall built. You know, Paris has been surrounded by many walls in its history. The Farmers General Wall was erected just before the French Revolution, 18th century. And it was not a defensive wall. It was a wall built for taxation purposes. So picture a wall going around Paris with main entry points, about 60 of them, les barrières, the barriers they were called. A few survived. There is one in the beautiful Parc Monceau, located nearby, where I take you on a regular basis. And the result of that wall was that if you were within the city limits, and if you sold food or wine, you were heavily taxed. So, in the first half of the 19th century, all the small villages around Paris that were not within the wall, and you know a lot of them, Libatinol is one, Belleville, Montmartre, Passy, Auteuil, all of these were places where Parisians gradually started going to have a good time. And they built those guinguettes, those restaurants where you eat and drink, cheap wine usually, and you dance. And so Libatinol was a popular place and it started growing. So in the 1820s, some real estate developers thought, maybe we should start building, erecting properties here, subdividing the land and selling it. And that is what they did. And this is why it became a popular area. And there were other factors I'll tell you about a little later. So you can see street art here. So interestingly, this is a very old storefront because up there you can read the word pâtisserie. I'll get closer. So this used to be a boulangerie. It's completely run down. I like this message. Mazette. Darn it, it's a bit old-fashioned. La vie est une fête. Life is a celebration. I like that. But it's in really bad shape right now. It probably hasn't reopened. And Le Petit Village is another one of these restaurants or wine bars that are really popular in this corner of Paris. The nightlife is quite spectacular in Les Batignolles. There is a young crowd here, and you are going to see it at its quietest, of course, but this place would be hopping, especially on a Saturday afternoon when the weather is nice. I see they open at 5:30 typically and close at 2 in the morning, so that tells you. We are entering now La Rue Truffaut. Truffaut, who was one of the real estate developers. Nice connection with what I was just saying. So these gentlemen subdivided the land, sold it to some Paris bourgeois who wanted village homes because the air was renowned to be really pure in the Batignolles. So people would come from Paris to breathe the good air of Les Batignolles. And then some of them invested in low buildings, 3 floors tops, and they subdivided them into apartments. And they rented them out to the people who worked in the area. So this was never a very high-end area, elegant area. You had office workers, working class people, school teachers, and these are the people who lived along these streets. Of course, now it's hard to imagine because you see all these tall, stately buildings, but this is who lived around here, really. Interesting architecture here. Look at this beautiful home. Do you remember when I took you on 2 strolls around the other section of the 17th arrondissement where I live, La Plaine Monceau? This was definitely the most elegant part of the 17th arrondissement. Les Batignolles was never like that. And look at this building with the inner courtyard that's been recently renovated. Le commissariat de police, the police station of the 17th arrondissement, is located right on the right-hand side here. La Rue Truffaut is usually very quiet until kids come out of school, because right there where that flag is, behind the police, is a school. So it gets really lively late afternoon when the kids come out of school. Taking the time to show you some facades here. So the neighborhood where I took you in the fall, and of course those replays are on my YouTube channel, and I will link them up. When I share this replay on YouTube, I will link them up, so make sure to watch them if you haven't, to get the whole picture about the 17th arrondissement. Let's see. Trying to peek behind gates here. here is the school I was telling you about. Coucou, coucou. I'm a little short, you can barely see me. So it says École élémentaire, which is an elementary school. And you see an interesting take here on the Paris coat of arms, you know, the boat, a reference to the history of Paris linked to the Seine River and the merchants that used to be on the Seine, with the logo and the motto, which is Fluctuat et mergitur, tossed by the waves but doesn't sink. I like how that school has done an interesting take on this. And like most schools in Paris these days, it has a plaque that honors the Jewish children who were deported between 1942 and 1944 during the German occupation, and it mentions clearly with the complicity of the Vichy government and the French police. More than 80 of these children lived in the 17th arrondissement. Okay, so here is a great example of what a village home would look like in terms of the height and the aspect, the shutters. This is what a street like this would have looked like in the 19th century, until they started building those higher buildings you're familiar with already. Ah, car. All right, here's clearly an old facade. And they go fast, they go fast. 430 of you, thank you for being here. This is the latest stroll in a series I just launched a couple weeks ago called Paris Streetscape with Véro, where I organize a stroll around one street and we look at the neighborhood then and now. So today the street will be called La Rue De Batignol. We haven't seen it at the beginning, but we will see it towards the end of this stroll. And then we're talking, of course, about everything that goes around here. So picture this neighborhood through the 19th century. Like I said, not a very affluent neighborhood, but people had a great time here. It was a little village that grew and grew and grew. And of course, what changed everything was the arrival of the railroad in the mid-19th century, because Libatinol, and I'll show you the tracks, they're still here, Libatinol became a major transportation hub. I like the crows in the background. It became a major transportation hub. So see, it's really hard to picture, because if you look back at the street, you do see some of the lower buildings we've just seen on that side, but then you also see a lot of the higher buildings. So it's a bit of a mix. But as you walk around this neighborhood, you will see a lot of different architectural styles, and it's fun to spot the old buildings. My apologies if I don't answer questions. It's hard for me to see them sometimes as they scroll by. This is an archetier. So we still have some very old boutiques. An archetier is somebody who makes bows, you know, to play violin. So this is clearly a music store. An atelier or workshop. And so you still have them, those little workshops. And here you have a workshop for sculpture. And in fact, here is a great time to talk about something that les Batignolles are really well known about. Did you know that Impressionism was pretty much born in this neighborhood? A little closer maybe to where we were at the beginning of the stroll. There was a group of artists known as les artistes de groupe des Batignolles, the group of the Batignolles. And it met here for about 15 years, from the 1860s to the 1870s. And the group was organized around a painter named Manet, you know him, and a bunch of new artists, younger artists. And that group of people basically reads like a who's who of future impressionists. You would have had Monet was here, Renoir, Cézanne, Pissarro, they were all in this area. And they met in a cafe. and they wanted to revolutionize the art world. They couldn't agree on how to do it, and there were some pretty lively discussions, but they created a very there was a very creative group, a community that came out of that. And it was immortalized in a painting that you can see today at the Orsay Museum. And this is the painting, which shows a workshop in Les Batignolles. The painter was Fantin Latour. He was part of that group. The painter you see with the white pants is Manet. He's painting one of his friends. I'm going to turn because of the wind, like this. The tall gentleman sitting with his hands behind his back is actually Émile Zola. Émile Zola, the writer, was also young. You can see in their faces how young they were. So picture all of these guys who later became the Impressionists. And this is where all these ideas were born. Manet was the first one to use bright colors, and he inspired them. And so le Groupe des Batignolles, they had a paint shop around here where they could buy paint. They lived here, they had workshops here. So this is not something that's always well known about Les Batignolles, but worth investigating. The cafe, I wrote the name in the lower right corner, is the Café Gerbois. It's gone today, you couldn't see it. But the paint shop, there's still a sign on the facade, so you could actually look it up. There you go. So, here we are at la Rue des Dames. Okay, so la Rue des Dames, the street of the dames, of the ladies. I told you we would be referring to all the nuns and the Benedictines who lived in Montmartre and pretty much ruled the area for many, many centuries until the French Revolution. And you see how the street, la Rue des Dames, curves to the left? This was a very old road that's been here forever that would take you, if you followed it, to La Butte, to the hill of Montmartre. So today, if you follow it, you will probably bump into the beautiful Montmartre cemetery, one of the largest in Paris. I've taken you on 2 strolls in that cemetery. You can find them on YouTube as well. But before the cemetery was expanded, you would have actually reached Montmartre and La Butte really quickly. So La Rue des Dames, the name, is a tribute to the ladies of Montmartre, who were the Benedictines who were in a convent at the time. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but they still are at the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. There's a small group of them who lives and prays at the Sacré-Cœur Basilica today. But everything that they have built and run for centuries disappeared during the French Revolution. So we are going to follow La Rue des Dames. And this morning when I filmed a stroll for my club members, I actually followed it all the way to the fun Rue de Lévis, which is a market street next to where I live. So I filmed that stroll for them, so they will get to do that. Lots of wine shops, cavistes, and so forth in this section of Les Batignolles. Like I said, nightlife is a big deal. Now this, of course, has not escaped gentrification. You hear me say this everywhere in Paris. What I like in Les Batignolles is that it does retain a village feel, and the shops in Les Batignolles are never chains. It's very unusual to see a store that's a chain. If you compare with Montmartre or the Marais, which are completely invaded by French and international clothing chains, I think it's really nice. The drawback of that is that we don't know what's going to happen once this is all over and how many of these independent businesses are going to survive. So here you're going to see people lining up outside a restaurant for takeout, probably. Some restaurants have chosen to offer takeout so they can survive. Others have just decided to wait because they do get some money from the government. We are now entering the lifeline of this neighborhood right from the start, which was the Rue De Batignol. You see the sign? Rue De Batignol. And at the corner here stands an incredible building that was built in 1902. Frisé was the name of the architect. And this was built as a power station. So you won't see the power station because it used to sit in the back. But I want you to see this beautiful facade. And interestingly today, It still belongs to l'EDF, EDF, which is Électricité de France, the French power company. Ah. Oh, they're going away, good. Look at this entrance with the ceramic above the door. So this was a power plant, a very large one. Industrial Paris. Let's see if you can see up there the incredible artwork on that facade. It's been renovated, I can tell. Like this, maybe? Voila. Incredible building. Former power stations. No, patisseries were never closed. Patisseries are open. They were always open because they are considered essential, like all food stores. Stores that have taken turns closing were clothing stores and things like that. And poor restaurants, cafes, and bars that have been closed for weeks now since before Christmas. Actually, with this beautiful light on this building, even though a floor has clearly been added to it, this is a good example of what a building would have looked like in the 19th century along the street. It's not too high, and this is the type of building you would have seen. Now, I show you Paris with its warts too. This massive construction site is the city hall of the 17th arrondissement, not the original city hall, which was a beautiful building with a clock tower, but the one that was erected in the 1970s. And right now, as you can see, it's undergoing some major work. And typically, if you came here, you would see a very lively little square. There are 2 restaurants on the left here, and they would have sprawling terraces. And now you get to see this rare sight, French people walking around, drinking and eating. This never happens except when COVID is around. And we are going to enter the busy part of the neighborhood. So thank you for staying with me through these quieter streets, residential streets, as I was telling you a little bit more about the history. In 1860, when Napoleon III arrived and the Second Empire started, he decided to incorporate, I may have mentioned that earlier, a lot of these villages around Paris. And they didn't have a choice. And they became part of Paris, and this is where Paris went from 12 arrondissements to 20, those administrative districts we still have, and Libatinol, which by then was independent, was part of the 17th, like Montmartre was the 18th. It happened in 1860, and we will see a site today of the changes that he brought to the area. And in spite of gentrification, the fact that there's only people with some means can afford apartments around here now, young couples with children. This started about 10, 15 years ago. We call them, it's a great example here, we call them les bobos. We have hipsters and we have bobo here. Bobo, bourgeois, bohemian, young couples with means. You can tell from the price of the strollers or the fact that a lot of the children during the week are taken care of by nannies who speak English to them. This is a Wallace fountain, iconic site in Paris. And you've all heard the story, I'm sure, of how a philanthropist, English philanthropist who loved France and Paris, Sir Richard Wallace, gifted the city with quite a few of these fountains to provide water, really. They were operating, and you can see the water here, they still work today. After Napoleon III was defeated by Prussia in 1870, and that brought the collapse of the Second Empire, well, Paris was besieged and had a very, very hard winter. People ran out of food, they ran out of water, they ran out of everything, and a lot of them started drinking wine. That's all they had. So I think Sir Richard Wallace not only wanted to help the city and its people and bring water, but he also was trying to get a message across, because one of the 4 caryatids, these female figures, is actually, it represents sobriety. So I think he was trying to get the message across. Not sure it's getting across in a neighborhood like Les Batignolles with such great nightlife usually, but one can always try. So now we are in la Rue De Batignol, which was always the lifeline of this neighborhood. And what I'm showing you here, I think I'm safe here, hopefully. If not, you'll hear a big sound when a bike or car hits me. In the distance over there is the church. And when you travel outside Paris, in La Provence, all those small villages and towns, you know that when you see the church, you are at the heart of the village square. That's usually where it's organized. And Les Batignolles are no exceptions. So we're about to enter this very busy, lively street, and it always was, but I want you to see it in 1900. So in 1900, we will get to the church. You could see some people walking on the sidewalks, a lot of food merchants on the sides, and a lot of them are still here. And then you could see the church that we will talk about, Sainte-Marie des Batignolles. You see? So now, and then, I love doing that. It's so fun to compare. I guess I should be a little closer to the church to do this, but you get the picture. Voila. Fun, fun, fun. So along the street, lots of businesses you need, like shops you need to live here. You have your pressing in French, which is your dry cleaner. You have a boulanger that's doing a remodel right now, so it's closed. You have banks, a post office nearby. And you have, like I said, a lot of independent businesses. L'Italie des petits producteurs, Italy of small producers. Fine products, no doubt. So there is a clientele here that can afford those fine products. It wasn't always the case, like I said, in Les Batignolles. On the left here is Braise Café. It's become a chain. They make some of the finest crepes in Paris. They have several locations. This is one of them. And they don't seem to be hurt by the current crisis, because I just heard they opened a new location, or will be opening a new location at the Marché des Enfants Rouges in Le Marais, the 3rd arrondissement. There used to be a really cool little restaurant here that closed down recently. They couldn't make it and sold. And I heard that Braise Café is going to take over. Now, in case you don't know this, Braise is the Breton name for Brittany. This is a chain that came from Brittany. And their logo, or their slogan, I should say, is La crêpe autrement. Crepe, different types of crepes. Crepes differently, made differently. And they're all very good. Here's a bag of flour that says farine de sarrasin. This is the buckwheat you need to make the savory crepes. Those are my favorites. And we have all sorts of ciders and sodas and juices and hot cider. And you can do it to go, and they pack it up for you. Here on the right you see a galette, which is a savory one made with buckwheat. And on the left here is a plain crepe made with a different type of flour. Bonjour. Always say bonjour, especially if you film. It helps a little. Don't ignore them. Friendly advice. So, it's gonna get busier, like I thought. We have here a wine shop. Over there is a droguerie chic. I love that. That tells you that we have hipsters and bobos in this neighborhood, because it's not just la droguerie, your old-fashioned drugstore that sells everything, or quincaillerie. It's a droguerie chic. So all the products in there are pretty high-end products for the home, and you have to be willing to pay the price for them. Something you'll see a lot of is real estate agencies, lots and lots and lots of them. Probably the only chains you'll see around here, and the prices are insane. It's very expensive to live in the 17th, unless you go to the former industrial part of the neighborhood, which is called Les Épinettes. It's a section that's a little more affordable, maybe. These are two of my favorite facades on the street, because they remind me of the good old days, which I never knew, but that I can picture. An old photography shop and a bar that looks like we say in French, dans son jus, in its own juice, i.e. untouched. And you can see the people enjoying a drink. They're supposed to respect social distancing and they're not supposed to hang out together. I want to show you the window of the photography shop because it's kind of cool. Let's see. Oh boy. Look at that. You still have old cameras and merci. And mannequins. Look at that. And you just know that sign up there is very, very old. It's been there for a while. Merci. So it still operates, I think, as a photographer. Here's an ad for Chantel. Chantel was a really old brand of lingerie in France. My grandpa used to sell that brand at his store in southern France outside Toulouse. So the cafe is 120. Café crème is 250 to go. I might come back for a glass of wine later. Why not? Tagine, if you like to make Moroccan food or North African food. This is the dish you need to make tagine, which is a stew. And signs again of gentrification. Les Petits Raffineurs, you'll find a lot of kids stores around here. High-end toy stores, clothing stores for kids, but all independent businesses. A brocante, Antiquité brocante, to furnish these beautiful apartments around here, a far cry from the humble abodes that used to be here in the 19th century. Anything you see you want me to buy for you? Just holler. Pardon. What do we have? Little bears on the table, little bears on the table. Some very bric-a-brac is a great expression to describe the inside of that store. I don't think you can see much with the reflection, so I won't linger. Oh, this one I really like. Okay, so why are we lining up here? I'm trying to understand. Oh, there's a kebab place. I think they're lining up for kebab. Must be good kebab. Here's what I like. This boulangerie is really good. And I just adore walking past that lady. The first time I saw her, I thought she was real, and I stopped. It says, découvrez les délicieux macarons à l'ancienne de mon mari. Discover the delicious macarons made the old-fashioned way by my husband. 10 euros for 10 macarons. I guess that's one a pop. Sérieux, s'abstenir. If you're too serious and watching your diet, just don't stop here. And it's beautiful inside as well. They're very nice, very friendly. Lots of good boulangerie in the 17th, in the 17th. Here's a store that sells poultry, or it's a deli that makes, un traiteur makes dishes for you. Got to keep an eye on my time, huh? Getting close to 5, need to speed up a little. So I'll speed up so we can get to the heart of the neighborhood. The square, the center of the village. We actually just passed my hair salon. There are quite a few on the street. They're great. Wish I could stroll in the middle without getting run over. That wouldn't be very wise. There's a car coming. Hold on. Maybe I'll try it anyway. They'll honk at me. That's okay. Yeah, wet diet, right? So here I am, walking down the Rue De Batignol. That's been here forever and ever. The lifeline in this neighborhood. We are on Rue De Batignol. More stores on both sides, small supermarkets, food shops, all sorts of stores. Amorino, the very popular ice cream chain. When I said there aren't any chains, they make me lie. Shame on them. See how they've set up a terrace outside so people don't have to huddle by the counter. All right, here is the beautiful church. Sainte-Marie des Batignolles. When the real estate developers started building here and selling land, they thought a church would attract people more easily, because a real village needs to have a church, a theater, a post office, a city hall. And so the authorities didn't want to fund the church. It had to be funded with private funds. So it took a while to build. They expanded on it through the 19th century. But today it sits here, and they call it Neo-Greek style. It is not the most impressive church in Paris. It's rather austere, but it's also very elegant and quite austere inside as well, but really worth a visit if you ever come here. And I will stand to the other side, on the other side, to show you what the square looks like, because we are really on a village square here, and it's so unusual in Paris these days. You could be outside Paris anywhere. Let's do this. Look at all these young people sitting on the steps of the church, because there's no place else to go, really. No cafes, no restaurants. So this is as lively as I've seen it lately because of the weather. So check out this square. It's a semicircle like this. And fortunately for the Batignolles, real estate sprawl did not really take hold here. The buildings are still pretty original. See how low they are? And that's why this beautiful square retains its charm and its atmosphere. And usually you would have people sitting outside cafes and restaurants here, and you would have the same thing all along here. It would be a really, really lively scene. But today, they're making it work anyway. People are out and about. They're very relieved to get some decent weather, doing their best to catch up with friends maybe, have a drink at the same time. And we will be finishing the stroll in the next 10 minutes in the heart of this neighborhood, which is really the beautiful garden where I've taken you often since I've moved to this neighborhood in the fall, the Square des Batignolles. And we need to get there fast because since we have a 6 p.m. curfew, they close everything at 5:30. Here's another beautiful Wallace fountain. And the plaque on the wall tells you the name of that square, La Place du Docteur Félix L'Obligeois, who was a doctor, but he was also a statesman. They dedicated the square to him outside the church. And here we are headed for one of the best kept secrets in Paris for a really long time, which is the Square des Batignolles. There used to be only locals here. When I was still married, my mother-in-law used to tell me my ex-husband had grown up in this square and learned how to walk in this square. It was a big deal. It was really a park for young Parisians. Of course, in recent years with social media, etc., a lot of people have discovered le Square des Batignolles, but you can see it's always lively. During the week, you will see mostly kids with their nannies, where the parents are working, and the nannies, like I said, speak English. And it's beautiful year-round. It's really nice. But what you have to know is that this was one of the biggest changes brought to the neighborhood by Napoleon III and Haussmann once les Batignolles were incorporated into Paris. So in 1862, Haussmann and his team, Alphand was the guy in charge of developing all these beautiful parks we love so much in Paris, did this garden to please Napoleon III, who, of course, wanted an English-style romantic garden, the same type they did in the Butte Chaumont, north of Paris, or Parc Montsouris in the south. And you have here all the characteristics of these English-style gardens revisited by the French Second Empire, I guess. You have, everything is made out of concrete. This is not rock, it's made out of concrete. You have the grotto, the waterfall, you have the artificial lake or river. It's a lovely place. I'll do this so you can see while I go down. Up there is the orangerie. There's always an orangerie in a garden, and they use it for photo exhibits when photo exhibits are allowed, which is not the case right now. So see, you could be at the Butte Chaumont, just smaller. Oh, thanks. I can pronounce an American H. That's funny. I just saw that comment. Thank you. Well, I've had some practice while living in the US for almost 25 years. When I shared the video this morning, I was here at 10:30 and I said, I'm pretty sure things will be busier late afternoon. I think I was right. I knew it. It's always busy on the weekends, especially on Sundays. And on a pretty weekend, oh boy, it gets packed. And here you are, your Parisian street vibes, Parisians at play. There are lots of renowned trees in this park. Those here are platane, two different types of platane, plane trees or sycamore trees, and a lot of them are quite well known. If you're into trees, you need to come here because you'll know what they are. I don't. Look at the Parisians on their benches, doing the civilized thing, reading, catching up. Boy, this is really busy. I can see we have improvised groups over there that are drinking and kind of a picnic atmosphere. Children, as they always are. So the rocks are all concrete. They're not actual rocks. Again, this is what they did at that time. The vulture statue, which was added, I believe, in the 20s. It's more recent. This is very busy. Yeah, there are a lot of homeless people. There are shelters in Paris, but you will see a lot of more and more homeless people on the streets. I saw quite a few today, actually. Sad. So on that corner over there, as soon as you step outside the beautiful traditional romantic jardin or square des Batignolles, there's a whole new section that's been going up in the last few years. A brand new park called the Martin Luther King Park, an incredible modernistic architecture, modern architecture going around it. Very controversial because some people love it, some people hate it because it looks nothing like Paris. This would be a stroll in itself, so I'm not going to do that today. But one of the latest developments in this area has been the extension of Line 14, Metro Line 14, which, as you probably know, is one of the few fully automated lines in Paris. They've just added 4 stations to take it farther out to the northern sections of Paris, and one of the stops, the first stop that connects this section now, this neighborhood, directly to the Gare Saint-Lazare, is right here across from the park, from the square. So if you want to go to Saint-Lazare now, or if you want to get out of this section of the 17th, you need not use the line 13 because over there is the entrance to Pont Cardinet. They have named it after the old train station that's been here forever, since the 19th century. It's that building you see in the distance here they're working on. This is a train station with trains going through it. The line is called L, like Louis, and it's connected to Gare Saint-Lazare and a lot of cities west of Paris. And you have the pétanque players. This is a big deal in Libatinol, and this is what you would get in your average French village outside Paris anyway. So I think it's really in line with the theme. One more thing to show you, and then I'll be saying my goodbyes. I hope you have enjoyed the stroll. If you have, I have a virtual tip jar, and all that information will be in the video notes. As soon as I come off the air, Facebook will share the replay, and all that information will be in the notes. And of course, your donations are gratefully accepted. They cover the cost of preparing for these strolls. I'm back inside the garden, the square, as we say, and I'm going to wrap up. So picture this. This is big enough. These big tracks And that train station, Le Pont Cardinet, which used to be called Gare des Batignolles in the 19th century. But this was a lot bigger, if you can imagine it. There were tunnels too. And all of that was built in the 19th century. Became a huge storage area for the rest of Paris. And a lot of the activity and growth of Libatinol came at that time. Not just real estate sprawl and development, but also the activity that the railroads or the railway brought. Little Parisian swings, we call them balançoires. Les balançoires, see the children having fun. You have your chalet, which is your little hut that sells crepes, waffles, les crêpes, les gaufres, ice cream in the summer. And then of course you have your manège, your merry-go-round. This is not my favorite. I kind of like what's at the Parc Monceau better. You know, it's my favorite place. I go there often. And this is good enough for all the kids when they come here after school. They like it here. Little Parisian kids dressed to the nines. Young families, like I was saying. So I'm going to pop in and say goodbye in person before I wrap up. Like so. Et voilà. Thank you for joining me today. I've told as many stories as I could. Of course, there are other stories. In fact, I have ideas for a few more strolls in the 17th arrondissement. There are a lot of stories to tell in this wonderful section of Paris that are not very well known. So I'll probably be doing another live stream stroll soon to talk about the 17th. Now that you've seen Libatinol, though, it's a very important part of it. So if you'd like to encourage me to do more of those free virtual tours, I would ask you to look into joining the Friends with Véro club. We have a fun event coming up tomorrow on Sunday with some club members. I filmed an extra video for them. As always, they will get to see pictures taken as I was scouting for this stroll. And I still have fogged up glasses. So look into the club. The information is on Patreon, patreon.com/French Girl in Seattle. And again, that information will be in the video notes as soon as I come off the air. It's a really friendly community of Francophiles. We have really fun exchanging in our private Facebook group. So I encourage you to do this. It will be a great help to me. And I think you will really enjoy yourselves and learn a lot more than you have already about Paris and France. So mes amis, à bientôt. I will pan around one last time to give you not these ugly buildings above the tracks, but this pretty manège, merry-go-round, and one last peek at Parisians at play, which I suppose they will be doing all weekend long here. Might even be busier on Sunday. There you go. Thank you so much for being here. We did really well today, over 450 people, I think. So I will see you very, very soon. À bientôt.